Right. Good morning. Hope you had a great weekend. We had a great time in Franklin, Grandparent Day, and just enjoyed the time with my kids, my grandkids. Man, nothing like family, right? So it was rich. And Saturday, I spent most of the day studying and working on some projects and things like that. Yesterday, church was, man, I just love our little church. It's just amazing, and we had a great time of worship and good time of teaching. Celebrated the Lord's Supper together, and then we had a meal, and people hung out, and it was just a great time. So it was good. I'm ready to rock and roll today at work and just get this week on. So hope you are too. Hope everything's good in your world, and we're gonna jump into the book of Acts. We're in chapter 21, and we're working our way through. This is what we're looking at now. Really is the last time that Paul is a free man, and so in some ways it's kind of sad, and others we know it's coming. We knew that was going to take place. Paul, I assume, understood that was going to take place. He certainly had a lot of people explaining that to him, and so we're going to jump in verse 16 or 15 rather, and just kind of get going now. Let me just remind you where we are. Paul is on his way to Jerusalem, and it feels like the whole church in Asia and Europe has tried to keep him from coming to Jerusalem. He himself, he says, the Spirit says, chains and affliction await me. So, but Paul's on a mission. Paul is not going to be stopped or thwarted or cowed down because of any threat or anything like that. He's on a mission, and so here's what he's done. He's gone into Europe. He has cycled through Greece. He has collected money from all the churches in Asia and Greece to take to Jerusalem, in hopes for two things. I think one, to meet the needs of the Jewish church, because Paul loves those people. The other was hopefully to just bridge the gap that has always been there between the Hellenistic Jews and the Jews. And so there's been that little bit of rift. You remember that back in Acts 15, they came because the Jews were saying, well, these guys need to be circumcised, they need to keep the law. And there was a council between the apostles, James, the pastor of the church in Jerusalem, the elders of the church in Jerusalem, Paul and Barnabas. They all gathered, and they came up with a compromise. And Paul took that letter and had it read to all the Gentiles, and there was great joy because it meant they didn't have to bind themselves to the law, and so they were free. So that's where we find ourselves now. So Paul is heading to Jerusalem, thinking, I have to believe, that he can fix the church, right? And that's true of all A-type personalities kind of tend to think that they can fix everything. And I don't mean to say that in Paul in an arrogant way. I think Paul was one of the most humble men that we'll read throughout all the scriptures. On the surface, you can see that there sounds like this arrogance, but underneath that, it's all about him regarding others is more important than himself, and we're going to see that here in the text today. And it's all about Christ doing the work, not him, that he is weak. In his weakness, Christ is strong. We hear all of that, and I just think that he's like this eternal optimist. Hey, we got this. We can make this happen, right? And I find great comfort in that because I tend to believe the same thing. So he's got a group of 7 that he started off with to take with him to Jerusalem. Now, I'm not sure that Trophimus makes it. Paul speaks to Timothy. He says, I left Trophimus sick at Miletus. Now, you remember Miletus was where he met all the Ephesian elders. And so it may have been that Trophimus went that far, got sick. Paul leaves him there and heads on toward Jerusalem. But let's just kind of dive into the story. So he's got Sopater, Aristarchus, Secundus, Gaius, Timothy, Tychicus, Trophimus. All of those 7, plus Luke, are heading to Jerusalem. Paul's made it to Jerusalem. He's got money that the Gentiles collected. He's got these 7 men and Dr. Luke, and he's hoping to unite the church. So it says, verse 15. Oh, and you do remember that the last thing that we saw was when the prophet Agabus came down and prophesied that by taking the belt, wrapping it around him, and saying, in this way, they're going to hand you over to the Gentiles. So Paul's hearing that, going, oh, okay, I'm going to the Gentiles. Now, I don't know if he's kind of piecing it together, how his optimism works. My thought is he'll go, great, I'll make it to Rome. The government will pay my way there, and I'll get to speak to the church, and I'll get to go to Rome like I wanted to. I don't know what he's thinking, if he's thinking, hey, this is my end, or just, hey, I'm just going to keep getting beat up and banged up until the Lord comes back for him, or he goes home to be with Jesus. Now, so it says, the last thing they said was, and Lord will be done. All right. I mean, Paul's like, no, I'm going to Jerusalem. And they're like, all right, well, Lord will be done. Right. I mean, what is he going to do with a man who's on a mission and you can't stop him? And so then we get to verse 15. It says, and we got ready and went up to Jerusalem. Some of the disciples from Caesarea also went with us and brought us Manasseh of Cyprus, an early disciple with whom we were to stay. So here's where they are. They made their way. They started at Philip's house, and then he said, no, I'm going. And so he heads to Jerusalem. When they get to Jerusalem, he meets up with Manasseh, who's a Cyprus. That is, he's a Hellenistic Jew, which would be somebody they'd love to cozy up with, because right before they walk into the Jews, it's kind of nice to have companionship, right? Those people will go, hey, we're for you. And it gave him a little precursor of what's going to happen. He's an early disciple. By that term, early disciple, we have to assume that meant that he was at least there at Pentecost. Probably he knew Jesus as well. So when you speak of an early disciple, you can think of two things: early disciple of the church or early disciple of Jesus. So it's possible that he was one of the 70 that Jesus took around. It's possible that he was just observed him. We don't know. We have to surmise he was a disciple. That is, he was a learner. So whether he did that through the apostles, Jesus, we don't know. But at any rate, there's a lot of history behind him. He's been walking with the Lord for 30 years. So we're not talking about a novice here. And it says in verse 17, when he reached Jerusalem, the brothers and sisters welcomed us warmly. Right? The following day, Paul went in with us to James, and all the elders were present. So here's where they are. Man, they're all excited. They've had a great night. Now they're heading in to see James, and they can't wait to hand him the money, share with them what God has done among the Gentiles, and hopefully bring some unity to the situation. You would think Paul would know that Satan is always after chaos, rumors, and lies, because that's what he's going to run into here. And I think it's important for us as believers to understand that those things will probably always mark the church of those who are wanting to be true Christ followers. There will always be little hints of chaos along the way. There will be people that stir up rumors about you, and there will be out-and-out lies. Now, we evangelicals in America have already done a great job of destroying a lot of the credibility of the church anyway, by our own undoing, by greed, by sexual immorality, all of these things, and you can see that prevalent in the church today. The church has done a pretty good job of sabotaging themselves. But where the church is doing good stuff, Satan, you can rest assured, is seeking to sabotage the church also. And so this is what we're going to see develop as we walk through this. Today we're just going to see the story. We're going to take it all the way up to the point in which he does get arrested, and then we'll look at that. We'll spend a couple of days on that this week. But this is where we are. So let's just kind of read the story and see it unfold so that we get clear on what's going on. So they reached Jerusalem. The brothers and sisters welcomed them warmly. And so they're there. They've met with Manasseh and all the other brothers and sisters that Paul had action with, in and out and all of that. So there's just great joy in all of that. Verse 17, when he reached Jerusalem, the brothers and sisters welcomed us warmly. The following day, so they have a good night's sleep. Following day, Paul went in with us to James, and the elders were present. After greeting them, he reported in detail what God had done among the Gentiles through his ministry. So Paul gets there, and he's excited, And he's like, hey, man, I can't wait to tell you what's going on. And so he gives a report. He tells them all about Ephesus, and he tells them about going to Thessalonica and how for 3 years he had spent in Asia and the gospel had really gone everywhere. He spoke about the Corinthian church and all of those great things that took place all along the way, and how believers are everywhere, and how all of Asia has already heard the gospel of Christ because of his time there in Ephesus. And so he's explaining all of that. He's explaining how, we heard about the Jerusalem and the church was struggling, so I collected all the money. Man, they did well. Macedonians, those guys came through. Corinth came through. Here's some cash, and we're just excited about being here. Yeah, that's how it goes. Then it says, when they heard it, verse 20, they glorified God. Great. They're excited. But James has another facet that he's been working on, right? So Paul's been doing his thing, and he's gotten beat up, and I'm sure they told him all of those stories. Well, look, it hadn't been a bed of roses for James. And so this is where Paul now hears the other side, the flip side of what's taking place in Jerusalem. And it's not really a pretty picture. On the surface, it seemed like James going, hey, good job, but hey, we got bigger problems, man. But this is what's going on. It says, you see, brothers, how many thousands of Jews there are who have believed, and they're zealous for the law of God. He said, man, listen, in Jerusalem, we're seeing untold people coming to Christ. Thousands, myriads. So, we don't know how big the church is now. It could be 10,000, could be 100,000. It's just huge in Jerusalem. And he says, and they are zealous for the law. Now, when he says that they're those who believed and zealous for the law, we have to assume that these are Judaizers, because James wouldn't consider them believers, those who felt like that Jesus wasn't the Messiah. These are people who believe Jesus was the Messiah, but their culture has them still doing all the ceremonial laws. They don't see the need to leave the Jewish culture, to leave the laws. They understand that grace is available, and they're there by faith, and so they've received that. But the law is kind of a big deal. And so they're wrestling with that. I want you to feel the tension, because it's not like they're unsaved people who just are legalists. That would be called Judaizers. They're not using that term here. These are those who are steeped in tradition. That's probably the better way of saying it. And they believe that tradition to be good and holy and right. And they don't believe that people should depart from that tradition. So this is what's going on. And we'll kind of walk through this as we get there. But he says, now, he said, you see, brothers, how many thousands of Jews there are who have believed, and they're zealous for the law. But they have been informed about you. Now, where did they get that information? Well, the Jews that were nipping at Paul's heels all the way through. Listen to what it says. But they have been informed about you, that you are teaching all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to abandon Moses. Never did he do that. Isn't it amazing? The rumor mill could stretch out and be as crazy. Listen, we think our world is crazy, and it is. Right now, everybody's lying about everything in politics. Everybody's lying about everything in evangelicalism. You've got the deconstructionists that are, it's just crazy what's going on. There's chaos in our country. It's crazy. Just so we can understand some things, Paul was going through, and James are going through some very similar things there. It's a crazy world. It's always a crazy world, because anywhere you have Satan and you have men in the flesh, men and women in the flesh, you're going to have rumors and lies and chaos. It's just going to happen. It's earthly. It's wisdom from worldly wisdom. That's what the scripture says, what James says. Worldly wisdom always produces those things. You think he may have gotten that from here? Probably so. Now, it says, he says, the Jews are among the Gentiles, but they have been informed about you that you're teaching all the Jews who are among the Gentiles to abandon Moses, telling them not to circumcise their children or to live according to the customs. And Paul's like, we know Paul didn't do that. In fact, Paul had Timothy circumcised, right? So that when he took him along, it kind of smoothed things over. So Paul's not this guy out there going, hey man, forget the law. It's all about grace. It is. And when you speak of the law that would save you, right? It's not the law that saves us. That's faith and rules. That's man-made. That's a gospel that should be accursed. He's not saying that. He's saying, hey man, I'm willing to go along to get along. And this is what he's doing. So, verse 22. So what is to be done? James like, so what are we going to do? But he already has a plan. They will certainly hear that you've come. Therefore, do what we tell you. So they've already been thinking, hey, Paul's going to get here, and here's what's going to happen. When he gets here, he's going to level with him, and here's what he needs to do. So they've already decided what Paul the Apostle needs to do. There was no question. It's like, this is it. What I love about Paul is the humble way in which he goes, okay. And so this is what happens. Therefore, do what we tell you. We have 4 men here who have made a vow. Now, that would be Jews who made a vow. He says, take these men, purify yourself along with them, and pray for them to get their heads shaved, and pay for them to get their heads shaved. So Paul like, okay, cool. Listen, Paul had already made a vow earlier. It's not like Paul was against the ceremonial aspects of the law. Listen, he came out of that too. I want us to understand how hard it is to leave the traditional aspects of things in this new religion, so to speak, of the way. And so this is what's going on there. So Paul's like, okay, cool. I'll take these 4 men. I'll pay for them to get their heads done. That way they'll know, hey, I'm kind of the guy. I'm going to have my head shaved. We're all going to make a vow. And everybody will know that Paul keeps the law. That's what's going on. With regard to the Gentiles who have believed, we have written a letter containing our decision that they should keep themselves from food sacrificed to idols, from blood, from what is strangled, and from sexual immorality. We already know that. That was Acts chapter 15. So they're saying, hey, Paul, take this letter with you from the official church that you already probably have, but here's a copy. Do these vow things. Maybe it'll smooth everything over. So that's what they're going to do. So the next day, Paul took them in, having purified himself along with them. He entered the temple, announcing the completion of the purification days when the offering would be made for each of them. So he goes in, hey, listen, here we are. We're coming in to let you know we made a vow. We're going to do this 7-day purification thing, and we're going to come back, and we're going to pay our atonement, and we're going to be on our way, right? So should be clear. Everybody can hear what's going on. Any Jew that's chasing Paul around can hear what's going on, so it should be good. When the 7 days were nearly over, some Jews from the province of Asia saw him in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd, and seized him, shouting, fellow Israelites, help! This is the man who teaches everyone everywhere against our people, our law, and this place. What's more, he also brought Greeks into the temple and has defiled this holy place. For they had previously seen Trophimus the Ephesian in the city with him, and had supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple, which he did not. Chaos, rumors, and lies. The whole city was stirred up, and the people rushed together. They seized Paul, dragged him out of the temple, and at once the gates were shut. As they were going to kill him, word went up to the command of the regiment that all the Jerusalem was in chaos. That's as far as we're going to get today. Is that not crazy? This is what happens, though. It's just chaos. Now, the reason why I want us to be clear on some things is Romans 14. Paul had already written that letter. And in Romans 14, he speaks of what it looks like to compromise this thing about law and all of that. Listen to what Paul's heart is. He says, listen, verse 5 of Romans 14. One person judges one day to be more important than another. Someone else judges every day the same. Let each one be fully convinced in his own mind. Whoever observes the day observes the honor of the Lord. Whoever eats, eats the Lord, since he gives thanks to God. Whoever does not eat is of the Lord. He does not eat, and he gives thanks to God. For none of us lives for himself, and no one dies for himself. If we live for the Lord. And if we die, we die for the Lord. Therefore, whether we live or die, we belong to the Lord. But you, why do you judge your brother or sister? Or why do you despise your brother or sister? For we all stand before the judgment seat of God. And then he goes in, he starts talking about verse 13. Therefore, let us no longer judge one another. Decide never to put a stumbling block or pitfall in the way of your brother or sister. And he goes into eating meat, all of those kind of things. And this is where Paul's heart is. Now we're going to look tomorrow a little closer at that. I just want us to understand that Paul here is doing everything he can do to bring unity to the church. It always takes two for that to happen. And man, what powerful reminders of how evil is in this world. Lord bless you guys. That's as far as we get today. I know it didn't sound very conclusive, but we're just kind of getting into this thing. Lord willing, I'll see you in the morning and we'll sort it all out. Have a good day.